My first BL experience, Twilight Out of Focus. We're at the end of summer 2024, so it's time to talk about the shows that I finished. My first, in multiple ways, is Twilight Out of Focus or Tasogare Out of Focus. I talk a lot about shows focused on cute girls, but this time I'm talking about cute boys without a single female character in sight. There will be spoilers for the anime and any parts of the manga and the other adaptations that the anime covers, and there will be light discussion of sexual topics. So, to give some of my background, I had not seen any proper boys' love before watching Twilight Out of Focus. I've never had anything against BL, it was just not something I thought about or really looked into. I've heard friends and people online talk about it and usually praise it, but I was never involved enough to take much out of that. And of course, I've seen memes and stereotypes like Boku no Pico and Fujoshi parody, but I knew those weren't proper representations of the genre and the community as a whole. As to how I ended up watching this one, I simply didn't have much to watch this season and came across it while looking through the summer 2024 anime list again. I felt in the mood for romance and thought the premise sounded interesting, so I decided I'd finally give BL a proper shot. And I'm really glad I did, because I thoroughly enjoyed this anime. As far as I can tell, this seems like it would be a good introduction to BL, showcasing multiple relationships while not being too intense. But I am a newbie, so I will allow the experts to make that call. Hopefully, as he says and as you can see, it does matter what could be your first, so hopefully I picked a good one. As I'm not very knowledgeable on BL, do forgive me for not knowing terms and tropes and stuff like that. And if I accidentally say anything sensitive, I don't think I did, but just making it clear that I would never try to say anything truly derogatory. So, as a romance, it is really, really cute, while also having a good amount of substance when it comes to relationships. There is plenty here to enjoy for someone who's not strictly into BL for any kind of fetishy kind of reason. So for the couples, my most at least favorite is Kichi plus Jin, Rei plus Shion, then Hisashi plus Mao. So this is a series that up until the last few episodes focused entirely on one couple at a time. This can make each couple feel a bit detached and make the anime feel less cohesive, feeling more akin to separated stories that take place in the same setting. So I'm not a huge fan of that, and I did think early on that was a little bit of an issue, but it does get better once we got to the last of the three main couples, as the previous characters had some more roles to fill there, and then onward it's much better. Thankfully for the last few episodes, they give us focus on all of the couples, which helps remedy this issue. This was a good move that made things at least wrap up much more cohesively. I'm glad they got back to focusing on Mao and Hisashi, as after many episodes of the other two couples, the couples of which I did like better, I started to forget about them. I do think Mao and Hisashi work, but I don't really have a lot to say about them as characters and in terms of their dynamic. Yeah, not bad, but there's just not as much individual, real interest and resonance with me. But I do think they play well into various themes and topics concerning relationships and that kind of stuff, though, which I will get more into later. So it's not as if I think it was bad or a waste of time or anything like that. Clearly, it was not so bad that I decided to drop it. So yeah, I still think they have some strengths to what we see from them on screen, which I'll get more into in a bit. The setting of a film club worked really great for giving the characters scenarios and topics to talk about, that are then recontextualized into who they are as people and in their relationships. I like when the characters make analogies and metaphors about filmmaking within their situations. The film setting is ingrained enough in their characters that I can buy them thinking and saying metaphors and cheesy things around film. In a lot of series, you get those types of meta kind of phrases and stuff like that, like saying the title and things along those lines. And most of the time, it's a minor nitpick to say that it doesn't fit with the setting, the characters wouldn't say this, but when you're really going for immersion and really like immersion, it can sometimes be like a small break in that. But here I don't think it is, because it makes sense for these characters. These characters are passionate about film, and filming is the main activity that they engage in. So it makes sense that when they're casually talking to each other or being very serious, talk about their emotional things, they would use filmmaking metaphors. It makes sense. I think that helps make the dialogue a lot more natural and fluid, and really help the characters feel ingrained in their setting. And part of what makes Gichi and Jin my favorite couple is that their collective passion for the film that you see in the series and in their characters is perfectly intertwined, the most out of all the other couples. They take the best advantage of the setting, with their great antagonistic back and forth from their competition as the heads of their year in filmmakers with different visions and how that plays into their characters and their relationships. Yeah, I love these two. They're absolutely the highlight for me. Gichi also brings a ton of hilarious meta jokes about BL, being a BL otaku. This is even better because his experience with BL genuinely alters how he interprets and views things between him and Jin. Seeing him react to his feelings through that lens is really funny. It also kind of almost puts him a bit into the perspective of the viewer. And Jin also gives us a different reaction, as he accepts it pretty quickly, but is unsure what to do about it. Their difference in reactions plays into their contrasting dynamic. And I just think that's very interesting, and just everything about these two I just think was really great. And another great move that the anime does is following up on these two who are entrenched in filmmaking fully, following up with the next main character, Shion, who initially has no care for it at all. This contrast worked great at keeping the transition to a new focus character fresh. Shion, I Can Fix Him, Yoshino, immediately became a very likable character to me. I think he's also really great. On first glance, he's very talented, but his only true interest is in being gay, aka getting in a relationship. I believe that this is a great portrayal of the struggles an openly gay man can face, such as people reducing them down to just their sexuality. Shion, really thought it was funny that Shion feels like he almost got stuck in a time loop, if you get that reference, with all his demands of an idealized school life. I loved his outlook of romance being swayed by media like Gichi, but Gichi was not actively pursuing romance while Shion was. And then as we get further in, we see Shion's struggles and why he so adamantly pursues a relationship, despite never sticking with any of his other activities. The latter point matches with Rei, who is initially unwilling to compromise at all in his relationship. It took longer for me to grow attached to Rei, but once we got a good look into who he is as people, who he is as a person, I really got attached to those two's dynamic. I thought that they're also a really cute couple. One of the most hilarious segments is Rei being a crappy boyfriend, but then evolves into being an important part of his character. The running gags of both of the latter couples, they're really funny, but it's also integral to their personalities and their dynamic, rather than being something that's just a joke. This part of the story is also when it starts to fix the detachment issue, as Rei was a character we had been introduced to through the previous couple's time together. Rei gets to help Jin navigate his feelings, then Jin returns the favor during Rei's time in the spotlight. Both of these couples feel complementary to each other. I believe this also plays into why I like these two couples better, as they have a lot more meaningful interactions with the rest of the cast. While with Hisashi and Mao, it felt more like they're in their own world. So, moving on, I think there were way too many topics and feelings around romance and relationships brought up in the show to cover in just one thing. So I wanted to highlight some of the ones that resonated the most with me, like the topics and things that I really liked the most. Dealing with change is a very difficult thing to navigate in a relationship, but you can get through it with proper communication. Shion and Rei's relationship focuses heavily on how they both change in ways they didn't expect. People talk a lot about actively making an effort to change ourselves. We are constantly doing this. All people are. But in reality, it tends to happen a lot when we aren't trying. And we tend not to see changes in ourselves as well as other people can see them. We especially see this with Shion and Rei. Change can be scary, but partners and friends can help us navigate change. Rei and Jin help each other realize how much each of the other has changed through meeting and getting closer to their respective partner, and then they both take that positive energy to go back to their partner. Shion and Rei both realize that since they love each other, they can embrace some changing of their habits in order to cater to the other person, but not in a negative way. Changing for a person one-sidedly is very problematic, but to a degree it is necessary in relationships. Changing for someone isn't inherently a problem. It's the context around it, why you're changing, that matters, and the degree. Time bringing change can lead to a lot of testing of relationships, which Hisashi is afraid of as it comes time for them to graduate. But Mao, now more secure with himself and the relationship, recognize that they have to take these changes head on. Gichi and Jin have a similar issue, instead with both of them feeling anxious about how Jin's graduation will affect things. But they were able to dissuade these fears by listening to encouragement from the other person. Even if their cheesy encouragement seems empty to the one saying it, it does not feel empty for the other person. So they can help each other even if they don't truly believe what they're saying, the other person can. And that is helping their relationship and helping them move forward together. They're relying on each other to keep themselves afloat. And in the right way, in the right context, in the right ways, that is healthy. Next point, when you're in a relationship with someone, you see that person's growth firsthand. When your significant other makes positive improvements in their life, it can make you want to improve and grow alongside them, which is great. But while it can be inspiring, it can also be crushing. It can leave you with feelings of inadequacy, such as being left behind as they charge ahead, or feeling unworthy of being with them, especially as they seem even better as a person. This also comes from simply being in love with someone. In a serious relationship, you are putting a person on a pedestal as someone truly special. So it makes sense that you hold them in high regard, and sometimes that results in you putting higher expectations on yourself. Mao faces this issue, with Hisashi helping him understand the positive things he brings to the relationship that he struggles to see himself. And something along that line, seeing your significant other expand their horizons is also great. You want to encourage your partner to learn new things, to improve in the ways they want to, and expand their horizons. But that also means that they might be spending less time with you as a result. We saw this with Hisashi and Mao. I feel possessiveness, in general, has a very negative connotation to it, considering at its extreme, it is very unhealthy and even dangerous. Of course, I'm not denying that at all. But the feeling of possessiveness is not inherently toxic. It is a natural part of being in love with someone. A complete lack of possessiveness can bring down relationships and indicate that at least one side is not truly invested or reciprocating. It feels good to be desired, and partners represent that. They recognize that. At various moments, we see the characters grow their relationships by being honest about their desire for each other, after one of them is starting to question it. We see this through Mao, with him feeling jealous. Mao realizes this feeling is toxic, and it makes him feel even worse about himself. But by openly talking about their desire for each other, both characters get their feelings reaffirmed, and they become more secure in their relationship. I feel Twilight Out of Focus gets the positivity and the natural aspects of possessiveness and how at healthy levels it is natural and it is good for a relationship. And another aspect of Twilight Out of Focus that I appreciated is how blunt it is with sexual topics. As I said, slight warning, it's not going to get overly graphic, but I'm going to be, in general, talking about broad topics. This may feel more notable to me because I'm not that experienced with BL, but I am experienced with how sexuality is typically shown in anime. For example, Mao and Hisashi openly talk to each other about masturbation in a non-sexual scenario. That was unironically such a pleasant surprise and a great early impression. This seems like a weird thing to say is notable, I get that, but when masturbation can be treated as something taboo to talk about, when we're not talking about something genuinely pornographic, it is nice to have characters talking about it like real people do. It's something that makes sense for roommates in a very small space to talk about. Those were conversations people had during college. And any other kind of scenario where you're living with someone. The characters feel a lot more natural in the series, in part because we get to see these conversations. It's treating these sexual topics as natural like they are, rather than having things like feel stunted or very specific like I think a lot of anime can tend to. This makes the scenes of more increased sexual nature feel less sudden. sometimes it can feel like anime characters act like sex basically doesn't exist until they have sexual organs directly in front of them, or they're just like directly talking about having sex. I also like how it makes it very clear that the characters are having sex when they are, but not getting overly graphic with those scenes. Whether that's good or shame may depend on your taste, but as someone who's not into or grossed out by gay sex scenes, I think this is a good middle ground. The relationships also feel more natural because we are explicitly aware that they are having sex, and because of that, we can probably get where they're coming from when they talk about it as an aspect of their relationship. When Mao talks about feeling bad over never initiating sex, that would be harder to understand if our perspective only consisted of the implications that they were having sex, like a lot of anime can tend to do at times. We see that Hisashi is usually the one initiating, and someone paying close attention could pick that out. When so many anime beat around the bush concerning sexual topics or just have very specific things, like certain body parts or specific activities, like censored, it was very satisfying to have Twilight Out of Focus give a much more expansive and natural view of it. So as an anime that openly brings up sexual topics, I think it does a very good job of handling those things in a much more mature way. And for me, who is someone older, I think that's good. I think that made for a more enjoyable experience. And briefly talk about the technical side of things, the visual presentation is excellent. The show looks really great. The shading and the animation is really good. The use of film motifs is done very well and how some scenes are presented. I also really like the character designs. Overall, the presentation is very, very good. So, in conclusion, I think this show gave a very good impression of what BL has to offer. I can see a lot of the strong elements that I've heard people praise BL for, such as the more mature writing. I had a lot of fun watching these characters enter and navigate issues in their relationship. It was very cute and it was funny, through its variety of well-written character dynamics and personalities. The entire series also plays into its film setting very well. So, going forward, I wouldn't exactly call myself a fan of BL now, but going forward, I will properly consider it when I'm looking for a romance fix. So, thank you very much for listening. If you want to see the blog post that I base this on my website, you can find that in the description. I also have a Patreon, which you can find in the description or on my website. If you follow for free, then you can get notifications for every time I post on my website. And those posts do usually come up before the YouTube videos come out. And if you are willing to pay to support me, which I would be very thankful for, but there's absolutely no pressure, then you can vote in polls that I put up on there to vote for something you'd like to see me come out with. So if any of that interests you, please check it out, and thank you very much.